I'm Yulia, the voice of the podcast Love to Heal, a journey of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual growth.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Love to Heal podcast. Before I jump into today's episode, let me remind you to subscribe to my podcast on whatever application or platform you're using so that you know every time a new episode comes out. And if you're ever in need of a quick inspiration or cheer me up, look for my short videos and posts on Instagram and TikTok. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had a very vivid dream in which a number was shown to me, and it really caught my attention. I actually have vivid dreams pretty much every night, but some stand out and others don't. So, this dream in particular really stood out to me, and as soon as I woke up in the morning, I knew I had to look up the meaning of the number, which was 816. Of course, the first place I went was Google, and after typing in that number, the first result that I got was the angel number 816 and its spiritual meaning. So I'll read to you what Google said. It says, angel number 816 carries a spiritual message of finding balance between your material and spiritual goals. Your angels want you to focus on your spiritual growth and development. Dedicate time for meditation, prayer, and connecting with your higher self. By doing so, you will gain clarity, inner peace, and divine guidance to fulfill your life purpose. Interestingly enough, the same webpage that had this explanation, when I scrolled down, also had a biblical explanation, which read, in the Bible, number 8 symbolizes new beginnings, while number 1 represents unity and leadership. The combination of numbers 8 and 1 signify the beginning of a new spiritual journey with divine guidance. Number 6 represents unconditional love and harmony, reminding us to love our neighbors as ourselves. When I read this, I got very excited. It was the message that I wanted to hear and also needed to hear because, let's face it, starting a podcast, as I did, is not an easy feat for several reasons. It takes tons of time, and instead of getting paid for what I do, I actually have to pay to even be heard because nobody knows about me, right? I'm not a famous person. So for me to even show up in the results of a podcast search, I have to either be really lucky or be extremely good at what I do. And then there are people close to me who don't even believe in what I'm doing, who don't encourage me or sometimes try to discourage me from what I'm doing. So it's challenging and it's disheartening when no one seems to appreciate your work. I actually finally understand what it's like to be an artist. So I give all the artists out there a lot of credit for keep doing what they're doing and for following their hearts and souls' desire and purpose. This message in my dream, however, inspired me to really keep going. I wasn't going to quit anytime soon, okay? But I did have my doubts, as a lot of people do in projects that they start, right? After this dream and the reassurance to keep following my soul's purpose and also to trust divine timing, I felt like someone replaced the battery in me, and the new charge will get me much further. And while I absolutely love the explanation of the angel number and the biblical one too, I still wanted to dig deeper. As you know, I have transitioned from the New Age spirituality into Judaism. So my next step was to research the significance of numbers in Judaism. I already knew that numbers were important in the Torah and especially the Kabbalah, and that some were considered lucky, but that was basically the extent of my knowledge. So I began to read up on this topic, and here's what I found. Jews have actually always found meaning and significance in special numbers, perhaps most intensively through the practice of gematria, ascribing numerical values to letters and words that are said to reveal mystical connections. But even beyond this Kabbalistic practice, certain numbers have a way of reappearing in the tradition and have accrued significance by virtue of their presence in key texts and rituals. Let me give you just a couple of examples. There are many, basically for every number and letter, but I'll just do 3. So the number 1, it corresponds to the first letter of the alphabet, Aleph, and it symbolizes the unity of God. God is one. The God in his action as creator is called Elohim, which begins with the letter Aleph. And the 10 Commandments in Hebrew begin with the letter Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet, which proclaims that God is one. So, number 1 is the first significant number in Judaism. Then, for example, there's number 7. This is one of the most significant numbers in Judaism, too. The Jewish week is 7 days long because God created the world in 6 days and then rested on the 7th. The Hebrew word for week, by the way, Shavua, is derived from the Hebrew word for 7, which is Sheva. The menorah, this is very interesting, in the ancient temple also represented the creation with 7 branches, 3 on each side and 1 in the middle. Later on, the menorah that we use for Hanukkah was actually modeled after that menorah. The number 7 doesn't just structure the daily cycle of Jewish life, it is also part of a Jewish yearly agricultural cycle. Every 7th year, called the Shemitah, or sabbatical year, the land is not tilled but allowed to lie fallow and rest. According to Jewish tradition, there are 613 commandments that Jews must follow, but just 7 for the rest of humanity. And these are called the 7 Noahide laws. At Jewish weddings, 7 blessings are recited over the bride and groom under the huppah. In some cases, the bride circles the groom 7 times, and in other contexts, the couple circles one another 7 times. And then there's number 18, which is probably the most famous of numbers. It is considered lucky because the numerical value of the word high, which means life, is 18. And so Jews often give monetary gifts in multiples of 18. So when you go to a bar mitzvah, for example, you might give an amount of $18, $180, maybe $1,800. So this one is very famous and very popular in Jewish tradition. So I won't describe the significance of every number, like I said, but it is very interesting to actually look at the Torah through the mystical lens and also to discover the roles of all these numbers in our daily lives. Now, remember, my number was specifically 816, which I did not find amongst the special or common numbers, but when I searched for its equivalent in letters, the word that is spelled out is to be guilty. The verb in Hebrew, asham, which is 3 letters, primarily conveys the idea of being guilty or committing an offense. It's often used in the context of moral or legal transgressions, indicating a breach of divine or societal laws. The term can also imply the feeling of guilt or the acknowledgement of wrongdoing. In the sacrificial system of ancient Israel, asham is associated with the guilt offering, a specific type of sacrifice made to atone for certain sins and to restore the relationship between the offender and God. As you can see, this is a very distinct explanation, or maybe it's a message from my subconscious or from God himself, I don't know. But after reading this, I started asking myself, do I feel guilty for maybe having offended God in the past, for not having followed the commandments, for having strayed from my faith, from my tradition, from my roots before, recently becoming religious. I was wondering, is it time for me to truly restore my relationship with God? But I feel like I've been doing my best recently to pray, to stay connected to God through certain mitzvahs or commandments. And I just don't know. Maybe I'm not doing enough. Or maybe I have done something recently for which I should feel guilty. Perhaps I don't practice what I preach. So I wasn't very satisfied with this explanation, and I decided to look at the separate numbers one more time. Because before I was looking at the complete number 816, whose value is this word, asham, feeling guilty. But if I look separately at the numbers 816 to see their significance, then it makes a little bit more sense, because the number 8 is symbolic of new beginnings, the covenant with God also, and even transcending nature. The number 1 represents unity, as I mentioned, and 6 could also be symbolic of unity, completion, and, like I mentioned, harmony and unconditional love. So when considering these numbers separately, their meaning definitely aligns more with the angel number meaning and gives me hope that my true spiritual journey has just begun, and that unity and completion are possibly my end goal. This is my personal interpretation, of course. But hey, who knows? Maybe it's not so far-fetched after all. Dreams can be interpreted in many ways. Even the Talmud regards dreaming as 1/60th of prophecy. The remainder it calls devarim betelim, which is nonsense or idle things. So how can a person separate the prophetic bit from all the rest of the nonsense? Well, the Talmud recommends consulting a dream interpreter. Yet dream interpreters, like Torah interpreters, may have very different opinions. The Talmud records the story of one sage who went to 24 dream interpreters, each of whom offered a different and true interpretation. And so, like the Torah itself, dreams can have multiple meanings. And that's why I've decided to be my own interpreter, and I've decided that good things are coming my way. To help that, of course, I will work even harder on my connection with God by observing more commandments and strengthening my faith. To guarantee a restful night and sweet dreams, by the way, here's an important prayer in Judaism that is said before going to bed. It is translated to English. So enjoy it, and until next time. Praised are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings sleep to my eyes, slumber to my eyelids. May it be your will, Lord my God, and God of my ancestors, that I lie down in peace and that I arise in peace. Let my sleep be undisturbed by troubling thoughts, bad dreams, and wicked schemes. May I have a night of tranquil slumber. May I awaken to the light of a new day, that my eyes may behold the splendor of your light. Praised are you, Lord, whose glory gives light to the entire world.